That first summer was the hardest time of my physical life. Every day I would take whatever job I could find during the morning to make a few dollars, and in the afternoons and evenings I would work on that land. I cleared rocks with my bare hands. I broke up the soil with tools I borrowed and eventually bought. I learned, through trial and massive amounts of error, which trees would grow in that climate, which ones would survive the winters. I planted apple trees, pear trees, cherry trees, and plum trees. Friends from town would drive by and laugh at me. They said I was wasting my time, wasting my money, that I should be focusing on things that would give me quick returns. But something magical happened during those months of hard work. My mind became still. All the chaotic, desperate thoughts that had been flooding my brain, all the anxiety about who I was supposed to become, all of that noise started to quiet down. Instead, my mind focused on simple, real things. The temperature of the soil, the amount of rain, the angle of the sun, whether this tree needed more water or less, whether this one was thriving or struggling. The work was hard, but the work was honest. And honest work, I learned, is the greatest teacher a young man can have. As those months turned into a year, and that year turned into 5 years, people began to notice a change in me. I was no longer jumping from job to job. I had found steady work as a construction foreman, which allowed me to support myself and still have energy for the orchard. The reckless behavior stopped. I stopped wasting money. I stopped chasing empty things. I met my wife Susan in 1958, and when I brought her to see the orchard, she cried. She said she had never seen a young man so committed to something larger than himself. We got married 2 years later, and we built our life around that land. The trees grew slowly at first. For 3 years I planted and watered and tended to them, and they gave nothing back except growth. This taught me the most important lesson of my entire life. The future is more valuable than the present moment. Most people want everything immediately. They want success right now, wealth right now, recognition right now. But the orchard taught me that the most beautiful things in life require patience. They require you to work today for benefits you will not see for years. They require faith. And they require the kind of steady, unglamorous dedication that nobody ever takes photographs of. You know, when you reach 90 years old, you start to understand that life is really just a collection of choices. Some of those choices were catastrophically wrong. I made mistakes that I spent decades trying to fix. Mistakes that cost me money, time, relationships, and peace of mind. But there is one decision I made when I was just 22 years old, a decision made during the most uncertain, confused, and frankly reckless period of my entire life. And that single choice ended up being the anchor that kept me alive. Today I want to share with you the story of how an orchard taught me more about living a long and meaningful life than any book, any teacher, or any amount of money ever could. I was a young man in 1954. The world felt enormous and terrifying. I had just finished my military service. I had very little money, very little direction, and absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was jumping from job to job, making foolish decisions with girls I didn't respect, spending money on things I didn't need, and living like each day might be my last. My family was worried about me. My mother would sit on our porch in the evenings and just shake her head, watching me come and go like a leaf blowing in the wind. She never criticized me, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She was wondering if I would ever become something steady, something real. One day a relative mentioned that there was some empty land available outside of town. It wasn't much, maybe just over 2 acres. And it was selling for almost nothing because nobody wanted it. The soil was poor, The location was isolated, and everyone in town said it was worthless. But something inside me, something I cannot explain even now, 70 years later, told me to look at it. So I did. I walked that land on a Saturday morning in late spring, and I felt something shift inside my chest. I remember standing in the middle of that empty field, completely broke, completely lost, and making a decision that changed everything. I decided to buy that land. I don't know where the courage came from, or maybe it was just desperation, but I borrowed money from my uncle, promising him I would repay him, and I bought that land. And then, because I was young and stupid and had nothing to lose, I decided to plant an orchard. I cannot stress this enough. I knew nothing about orchards. I had never planted anything in my life. I had no money for professional help. I had no real plan except that I knew I wanted to grow something that would last longer than I would. Something that would produce fruit year after year. Something that would need me to tend to it, to care for it, to think about the future. And so I began. In 1958, the first apple tree gave us a harvest. It was only about 30 apples, and they weren't even very large. But my wife and I sat under that tree and cried. We had created something living. We had put our hands in the earth, our sweat into the soil, and the earth had given something back. As the years went on, the trees grew stronger. By the time I was 30, the orchard was producing hundreds of pounds of fruit every year. By the time I was 40, it was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. But the real value of that orchard was never about the fruit. Don't get me wrong, we ate well. We sold fruit at the farmer's market. We gave apples and pears to neighbors. We made preserves that lasted all winter. The abundance was real. But what the orchard really gave me was something much more precious. It gave me a reason to stay alive when times got hard. And believe me, times got very hard. In 1967, my brother was killed in a car accident. In 1972, we lost our first daughter to a terrible illness. In 1985, our business failed and we lost almost everything we had saved. These were dark times, very dark times. The kind of darkness that can make you want to stop living. But every spring, without fail, those trees would bud. Every summer they would grow. Every fall they would give fruit. And in those moments when I felt like there was no reason to continue, I would walk to the orchard and I would remember that I had made something that was bigger than my pain. I had created a gift for the future. My children grew up in that orchard. They learned responsibility by helping me tend to the trees. They learned patience by watching the seasons change. They learned that hard work has value, that nature is honest in a way that people often are not. And when they grew up and left to build their own lives, they carried those lessons with them. My son is now a successful farmer himself. My daughter became a teacher who uses nature to help children learn about the world. Both of them still talk about the orchard as the most important classroom they ever attended. Now, in my 90th year, that orchard is still producing fruit. I cannot work it the way I once did, but my grandchildren come to help me. The oldest one, my grandson Marcus, he comes every weekend in the spring and fall. He is 17 years old, and he is learning the same lessons I learned at his age. He is learning to work with his hands, to be patient, to care for something that is not about getting rich or becoming famous. He is learning that the most important things you can build in life are the ones that will outlive you. I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s. I wasted money on things I cannot even remember now. I hurt people with careless words. I made poor decisions about work and about love. I chased things that had no real value. But the day I decided to plant that orchard, something changed. I stopped being a person who only thought about himself, and I started being a person who thought about the future. And that shift in my thinking changed everything. The most beautiful thing about planting an orchard when you are young is that you are making a promise to yourself that you will still be alive in 10 years. You are saying to the universe, I believe in tomorrow. I believe there will be a future for me. I am choosing to live not just for today, but for the seasons to come. And when you make that commitment, something inside you starts to heal. Your priorities start to shift. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. I know most of you watching this do not have the ability or the desire to plant a literal orchard. But I want you to understand the principle beneath this story, because it applies to everything in life. Whatever you are doing right now, in your 20s or your 30s, or whenever you are watching this, I want you to ask yourself, am I planting something that will grow? Am I making choices that my future self will thank me for? Am I building something that will last longer than I will? If you are in school, you are planting an orchard of knowledge. The studying is hard. The tests are frustrating. But you are building something in your mind that will produce fruit for the rest of your life. If you are learning a skill, you are planting an orchard. If you are saving money instead of spending it all immediately, you are planting an orchard. If you are treating your body with respect, exercising, eating well, sleeping enough, you are planting an orchard. If you are being kind to people and building real relationships instead of chasing shallow popularity, you are planting an orchard. Every single choice you make can be either short-term thinking or long-term thinking. And I am telling you from the perspective of someone who has lived almost 90 years. Long-term thinking is the only kind that matters. Something else happened to me because of that orchard that I did not expect until much later in life. I lived longer, much longer. My grandparents all died in their 60s. My parents both died in their 70s. But here I am, 90 years old, still working in that orchard, still walking several miles every day on that land, still able to see clearly, still able to think sharply. And I truly believe it is because of the orchard. The physical work kept my body strong, but more importantly, the purpose kept my mind alive. I have watched people retire and sit in front of the television, and their bodies deteriorate so quickly. But I have never retired. I have never stopped working towards something. And that sense of purpose, that connection to the earth, that knowledge that I am needed, that I have something to give to the next generation, this has kept me alive in a way that no medicine ever could. The orchard taught me so much about living in harmony with nature. And this is something that modern people have forgotten. We think we can control everything. We think we can force outcomes. But the orchard taught me that there is a rhythm to life, a rhythm that we must respect. In winter, the trees rest. You cannot force them to produce in winter, so you do not try. You prepare them. You protect them. You rest with them. In spring, they wake up and grow with incredible energy. This is the time to work hard, to plant new trees, to prune and prepare. In summer, you maintain, you water, you watch, you protect from pests and disease. In fall, you harvest, you gather what you have grown, and then the cycle begins again. This same rhythm applies to human life. We have seasons of hard work, seasons of rest, seasons of growth, and seasons of harvest. But we try to force every season to be the same. We try to produce all year. We try to work all the time without rest. And we wonder why we are exhausted, why we are sick, why we are unhappy. If we live more in harmony with natural cycles, if we respected our seasons the way the orchard respects its seasons, we would be so much healthier. Now, as I approach the end of my life, I think about what I am leaving behind. I will not leave behind a huge fortune, because I was never interested in accumulating wealth. But I am leaving behind an orchard that will produce fruit for my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. And more importantly than the fruit, I am leaving behind a story about what it means to invest in the future. I am leaving behind a place where young people can learn about patience and hard work and faith in tomorrow. My greatest joy now is watching my grandchildren understand something that takes most people their whole life to learn, that the future is more important than right now, that what you build today will feed your tomorrow, that meaning does not come from money or status or the temporary approval of other people. Meaning comes from creating something, nurturing something, and then passing it on. When I was 22 years old and everyone told me I was wasting my time and my money, I could not have imagined where this decision would lead. I could not have imagined the thousands of meals my family would eat from those trees. I could not have imagined the lessons my children and grandchildren would learn in that orchard. I could not have imagined that it would be the anchor that kept me alive through the darkest times. All I knew was that something inside me whispered that this mattered, that this was worth doing, and I listened to that whisper. Life is going to give you thousands of choices. Most of them will not matter very much. But every now and then you will face a choice that feels important. You will feel a pull towards something that seems hard or that does not make practical sense. That whisper inside you, that is worth listening to. That is the voice of your future self trying to tell you something important. I am 90 years old and I have lived a long life. I have made mistakes that kept me awake at night. I have experienced pain that I thought would break me. I have lost people I love deeply. But I also have an orchard, and because I planted that orchard 70 years ago, my grandchildren will have an orchard, and their children will have an orchard. And somewhere in the future, someone in my family line will be sitting under one of those same trees, eating an apple that grew from the same roots, and they will know that I was here. They will know that I cared about their tomorrow, and in that knowledge, I am immortal. In that orchard, I never die. This is what I want to tell you. Whether you are 22 or 72, plant your orchard. Whatever form it takes in your life, whatever seed it is that you are meant to plant, plant it. Do not wait for the perfect time. Do not wait until you are rich enough, or smart enough, or confident enough. Plant it now. Work it with your own hands. Tend it through the seasons. And trust that someday someone you love will eat the fruit and will understand that you love them before they were even born. If this message has touched your heart, if you know what your orchard is supposed to be, I want to ask you to do something. I want to ask you to subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the views or the recognition. At 90 years old, I do not need anything from the world. But because there is something beautiful happening here. We are taking the wisdom of old people, the wisdom that comes from actually living a long life, and we are passing it on to young people who are still deciding what they will build. We are planting seeds of wisdom that will grow and produce fruit for generations to come. This channel is my orchard for those of you who are listening, and I want to keep adding to it. Keep sharing these stories. Keep telling young people everywhere that your choices matter. Your future matters. What you build now will echo into the future in ways you cannot imagine. Thank you for listening to an old man talk about trees and time and the meaning of life. Thank you for caring about the message. And please, plant your orchard. The world is waiting for what you will create.